Welcome back to the Filipino FM channel, your home for Filipino Football Manager content. In this video, I am simulating forward until an Asian country wins the World Cup. Looking at the history of the World Cup, an Asian country has never won the World Cup, and an Asian country has also never been to the final of a World Cup. The closest an Asian country has ever been to ever winning a World Cup was in 2002 when it was hosted by South Korea and Japan. South Korea made the World Cup semifinals, although they did lose to Germany in the semifinals. I believe a Michael Ballack goal was the one that broke South Korean hearts. But overall, that is the closest that an Asian country has ever been to winning a World Cup. And I'm not sure maybe how your guys' saves are going, but for me at least, I never see an Asian team winning the World Cup. I'm sure it happens like years and years into the future, but usually I don't play long enough for an Asian team to win the World Cup. So today I am going to simulate forward to see how long it takes for an Asian team to win the World Cup. So as far as hypothesizing which Asian team could potentially win the World Cup, I'm going with any team that could compete in the Asian Nations Cup. So this includes South Korea, China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, but also teams like Australia, who, despite not being in continentally within Asia, they are considered part of the Asian Federation. So I am going to include Australia as one of the potential Asian teams who could win the World Cup. And honestly, I think there are some pretty good teams as far as Asia potentially winning the World Cup. For me, I think Japan and South Korea are probably the top two countries who would win the World Cup. If I had to bet, I would probably put my bet on South Korea being the first Asian team to win the World Cup. Overall, even within the game, they seem to produce some pretty good players. They have produced some generational talents in real life, Park Ji-sung, and most notably now Son Heung-min. But as far as Football Manager is concerned, they still seem to produce good players even at later points in the game. So I think they're a good bet to be the Asian team to win the World Cup. But other good teams, of course, include Japan, who always seems to produce good players, Qatar, who is hosting the World Cup, so within the game that might help to improve their youth rating. Australia overall is pretty decent. Saudi Arabia is pretty decent, and obviously now they have a lot more money even within the game. And finally, I think a dark horse could be China. China, as far as like later in the game is concerned, they being kind of having a lot of wealth in the country, they seem to produce better players and get better as the saves roll on. So I think China could be a dark horse. But again, if I was betting on one team, I would go for South Korea. But before we move forward, guys, check out the jersey. I got the Philippines World Cup jersey. We are obviously doing the Men's World Cup here. But as the Filipino FM channel, I gotta say, I don't know when this video is going to come out. It might come after the Women's World Cup is starting. But the Philippines will be in the Women's World Cup, so I am supporting them with the jersey here. But if you're Filipino and you're interested in the World Cup, make sure to give them a watch. I think it's going to be really exciting as the first Filipino team in the World Cup. So I'm really excited for that. But with that, let's go forward 4 World Cups maybe. So I think we can go forward to 2036, 2037. That should be 4 World Cups. I'm not expecting the Asian team to win early on, but hopefully by that time we'll be able to see enough change and possibly see an Asian team doing pretty well. So I'm going to go forward 4 World Cups to 2036, 2037, and I will see you then. Welcome back. We are in 2037 and we have had a few World Cups under the belt. So let's check to see, and wow, England's won 2 England is so OP in the game. But looking at the past winners of the World Cup, it doesn't look like we have an Asian team even finishing in the top 3. England winning 2 World Cups, followed by Belgium, and then Brazil winning the most recent one. And the last one was even hosted by China, which probably would have been the best indicator or best time for an Asian team to win the World Cup, being that it was in Asia. But let's take a look at the most recent 2034 World Cup and see which Asian team did the best. So looking at the 2038 World Cup, of course, it was Brazil and Belgium in the World Cup final. It doesn't look like we had an Asian team in the semifinal either. Looking at the quarterfinal, Saudi Arabia making the quarterfinal, losing 2-0 to Holland. So right now, Saudi Arabia might be the best Asian team. Can we take a look and see who their top players are? So we have a few playing in, we have one here in England, and he's a very good player. He's worth potentially 50 million. All right, Saudi Arabia might have a decent team. Let's look at this guy here. He's not bad, not great, but I think he's pretty decent. And we have another one at RB Leipzig. He's all right. So Saudi Arabia with some decent players, so they could potentially make a World Cup run. Let's see, looking at the third round, did we have any other Asian teams here? South Korea, again, Saudi Arabia. So South Korea and Saudi Arabia right now looking like two of the best teams in Asia. Let's take a look at South Korea. This guy's phenomenal. 182 current ability. I mean, they come out with like a Heung-min Son every year, but maybe doesn't have the supporting cast around him. This guy in RB Leipzig's okay. Let's look at some of these guys on Bayern. He's okay. Not a terrible goalkeeper. All right, so South Korea and Saudi Arabia potentially having the two best teams in Asia, both making the knockout rounds of the World Cup in 2038, but not really getting close to winning the World Cup. Looking at their players, I think Saudi Arabia has maybe the better top players overall, but South Korea has that one really fantastic player. And if they can keep producing some of those players around him, maybe for the next World Cup, they might have a shot. So I think I'll move forward in 10 season stints moving forward just to see how the Asian teams are doing. Fingers crossed that we will have an Asian team winning soon. I hope this isn't like a 100-year save. Otherwise, this is going to be a really long video, two, and two, my poor computer will not be able to handle that. So let's go forward 10 seasons. I'll go forward to 2047 and we'll see how Asian teams are doing there. See you in a bit. Welcome back. We are 10 years into the future in 2047. Let's take a look at the World Cup. And it looks like France, Portugal, and Uruguay won the most recent World Cups. And it was even held in Japan. So we've had, okay, well, Asia at least has been hosting some World Cups, so that's good. Let's take a look at the 2046 World Cup and see how Asian teams were doing. Oh, Japan didn't get out of Group A. That's a little sad. So looking at the stages, obviously the final was contested by France and Portugal. Semi-final, we had an African team. That's pretty cool. Senegal unfortunately losing in extra time to eventual winners France. Quarterfinal, did we get an Asian team? I don't see one, unfortunately. So not doing as good as before in the third round. So looking at the third round, do you see Australia making it? And that's it. Oh, this is a disappointing showing, I think, from Asian teams. Let's look at Australia. Their best player is Dimitrios Drivas, who unfortunately is a goalkeeper. He's a really good-looking goalkeeper, but I don't think a goalkeeper is going to win you a World Cup. The only other player, this Tristan Ford guy, who's playing for Villarreal, he looks good. He's at the end of his career, though, which I don't think there's really a big future here for Australia. They don't look like a World Cup winning side, unfortunately. Do we have anyone in the second round at least? Syria, all right. Syria making it pretty far. This is where you see our South Koreas, our China, who lost pretty poorly, Saudi Arabia. So a lot of Asian teams at least making it to the second round, but really not a great showing for Asian countries in the 2046 World Cup. Let's take a look again at some of the big nations. So looking at South Korea again, this guy is fun. Is this the same guy? This is a center back. That's interesting. He looks phenomenal. He is a decent goalkeeper for this level. This guy playing for LAFC. Again, South Korea coming in with like one really good player, but the rest of the team maybe not quite up to par. I saw China in here. Again, China's kind of my dark horse. So they have a kid at Feyenoord here, only 23 years old, and he's actually not as great as I thought he might be. Where else do they got? They have a guy at Hoffenheim here, so he's playing in Europe. He's all right. So I still think China's a dark horse, but they don't have a great looking team here. And the last one was Saudi Arabia, who we saw do really well before, and they have a player at PSG who looks fantastic. A pretty decent current ability and potential ability. And they have another guy at Hoffenheim here. He looks okay. Well, at this point, I wouldn't say there's really any Asian teams. South Korea has one player who could probably be on a World Cup winning squad, but I'd say the supporting cast maybe quite isn't quite there at the moment. And I think we can say the same thing about China, Saudi Arabia, Australia, so on and so forth. So that's where we're at in 2046. Let's go forward to 10 more years to 2057, and we'll see what's happening then. Well, in 2057, we still don't have a Asian World Cup winner. We've only, I guess, gone forward two World Cups, but I still don't even see an Asian team making the top three. Let's look at 2054 and see how our Asian teams did. So looking to the final, England versus Belgium. Belgium's had a pretty good save. We don't have a World Cup semifinalist. Do we have a quarterfinalist? No. Oh boy, this might be a long simulation. Third round? South Africa, Korea making it to the third round. I do think Korea is going to be our best bet. Let's take a look at South Korea and see how they're doing. They have a guy on Parthenope. He looks okay. I wouldn't say he looks fantastic. Let's look at this guy. This guy looks a little bit better, I think. He's a right back playing for Borussia Mönchengladbach, and he's a solid Bundesliga player. I do think, yeah, looking at this guy too, I do think honestly South Korea might even be a little bit worse than what we saw previously. And we don't have any other age. This might be a long sim. This might going forward. This might be a long video. I hope this isn't like an hour long video because that would be way too long. So 2054 again. So let's take a look at second round. Saudi Arabia making it again. It's pretty much all the usual suspects. Japan making it. Nice to see Japan there. Let's see how Japan's doing. They have a dude at Inter who actually looks very good as a left back. He's an excellent left back. They have a guy at OM. Japan actually looks like they have the top players. They look pretty solid. But South Korea making it a little bit further. They beat Italy on pens. So overall, looking at this again, I mean, it looks like Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and at this point, Japan, kind of the three that we were thinking potentially being the teams doing the best in the World Cup, but none of the three teams really even in contention. I mean, they don't even look like they have teams that could win the World Cup. Let's look at the Asian Nations Cup just to see if that gives us any indication of who the best teams might be. And again, looking at it, South Korea is pretty dominant since the start of the save. Syria winning it 1 year, but clearly South Korea and Saudi Arabia. Oh, even Australia doing pretty well. So these are probably the best teams in the save. So that is 2054 World Cup. We're in 2057. They'll have another one in 2058. So let's go forward 10 more years. That'll be another 3 World Cups. Let's see if we have an Asian winner then. All right, welcome back. We are on the 23rd of June, 2067, 10 years from where we last saw each other. Let's go to the World Cup, and South Korea's won the World Cup! Yes, we have an Asian nation winning it! South Korea in 2066 winning the World Cup. I don't know why I just went to records. Oh, done it! Right after. They even hosted it the previous year. Wow, and we haven't had an Asian team in the top three. Oh wow. All right, we gotta look at World Cup 2066. South Korea winning it. Do I have match? Oh, I don't have match details for it. Oh, unfortunately. Oh, that's too bad. But South Korea winning the World Cup. How did they get there? We have to look. So they beat Argentina in the semifinals. Quarterfinals, they got through Uruguay, and we didn't even have another Asian team. Third round, South Korea. Where are they? South Korea beat Mexico, and we did have some Asian teams in the third round. Iran here. Actually, it looks like that might be it. Wow, so Asian countries really weren't doing that well, but South Korea coming in and winning the World Cup. Let's see, in the second round, wow, there are a lot of teams. Second round has a lot of teams in it. So South Korea beat Algeria 3-0 very convincingly. And looking at the group stages, how did South Korea do in their group? South Korea actually finished second in their group, but they ended up winning the World Cup. That is phenomenal. And honestly, looking at their group, this seems like it would have been a Cinderella story because Italy completely dominated. If we go back to their schedule, they did win the Asian Cup too, so that's phenomenal. They lost to Italy 5-1, but still went on to win the World Cup. It looks like wins against Algeria and Mexico gave them that momentum, and then they couldn't be stopped from there. Let's look at their senior squad and see how good their players are. Let's actually go to their overview and look at their top. And they have some Barcelona, Arsenal, Villarreal, Jeonbuk, which is in Korea. So Lee Sang-chul, I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. He looks phenomenal. He looks like the second coming of Sun Heung-min. 174 current ability. He is a phenomenal player. Park Seong-jae, he's a very good looking player at defensive mid. He's solid. I think maybe his stats are better than his current ability shows. Park Jae-young, really fantastic physicals, which I think makes him a good left back. And he saw it. Honestly, looking at their top players, they have some good players, but this doesn't look like a World Cup winning side. But they have clearly managed to defy the odds to win the World Cup. Some good players, but I wouldn't say they're world beaters. But South Korea winning the World Cup, definitely led by this guy from Barcelona. He is absolutely fantastic. An Asian country has done it. We only had to go forward 45 years, but in 45 years, we have our first Asian World Cup winner. I am also interested to see those World Cup awards. South Korean, how is that guy not in the best player awards? It was dominated by these two Dutch players, but also a Croatian player. Best goalkeeper was won by a Croatian player. Best young player by a Portuguese player. The Dream Team, does it feature any Korean players? We have two Korean, but not like the really good one. We have this guy here, plays at center mid. He's good, but he's not as good as the other guy for Barcelona we saw earlier. I think we did see Lee Min-ho earlier. He is a fantastic player. I think he's better than his current ability shows. I mean, he has really good physicals and awesome mentals. Not really great technicals, but I mean, I think he has other compensatory attributes for that. So two Korean players in the Dream Team. Did they win the goal of the tournament? Oh, Lee Min-ho, getting second in the goal of the tournament. And the Golden Boot Award was won by an Englishman. So sadly, the South Korean players not really represented in the best awards, but who needs individual awards when you have the World Cup? Well, that's it. We only had to simulate 45, 44 years, all the way up to the 2066 World Cup. But an Asian country has done it. South Korea is who Football Manager predicts will be the first Asian country to win a World Cup. And overall, honestly, I don't think I simulated as far ahead as I thought I would. I thought this might even be like over 100-year save, but it only took 44 years. Well, with that, thank you for watching this video, simulating all the way forward until an Asian country won the World Cup. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you all are having a wonderful week, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.